To me, that was shocking information. I had no idea that 88% of small business owners were literally not making enough to really sustain themselves because $100,000 in revenue doesn't account for any of your operating expenses, doesn't account for taxes, doesn't account for you paying yourself.
Everyone, this is Bethany Meadows, and this is your time to thrive. My guest today is on a mission to end entrepreneurial burnout, and she knows exactly how to do it. Racheal Cook is the founder of the CEO Collective and host of Promote Yourself to CEO podcast. With over 15 years of experience coaching small business owners, she's become a go to expert in business strategy and leadership. Her work has been featured in Forbes, Inc., Entrepreneur, and more, but her real passion is helping women build businesses that don't require sacrificing their sanity or their Saturdays. A big welcome to the woman helping entrepreneurs ditch hustle culture for life first business, Racheal Cook. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Okay, like we always do, pick a number between 1 and 5 for our super random question.
Okay, let's go with 3.
3. When you're feeling sick, what makes you feel better?
Okay, so I actually have several chronic illnesses, so feeling sick is something I deal with on a regular basis.
Oh, wow.
And one thing I do, this is a great tip for anybody who has any sort of chronic thing that flares up. I have little checklists in my phone in my notes app. So depending on what type of illness I'm having, I have like, if you're having a migraine, do this. If you feeling a lot of pain or a lot of fatigue, do this. And so that helps me a lot because one of the challenges of having chronic health issues is often that brain fog. And when you have a lot of brain fog, it's really hard to tell somebody how they can help you. So what makes me feel better is having these little checklists I wrote when I was clear-headed, and then I can just look at it and know exactly what the things are that I need to do that will help.
Wow. That's an amazing answer to, a pretty simple question, but amazing.
I mean, it's a game changer because often when you don't feel well, people will say, "Well, what can I do?" Like my husband used to come to me, "What can
And
I
you're like,
do to
I
help you
don't
with this migraine?"
know.
And I'm literally like, "I don't know right now." But now he knows he can just go to my notes app and find the list. And then as long as he can follow that for me, it helps me get out of that flare up.
Well, let's get into. I'm excited about the show today. I'm excited to interview you and just extract all your wisdom and great ideas and insights for our audience. You've talked a lot about entrepreneurial poverty. Can you
Mhm.
break down what that really means and how someone knows when they're stuck in that?
Yeah. So, entrepreneurial poverty is something I started thinking about a while ago because, as someone who exclusively works with women entrepreneurs, I started seeing the research behind how much women entrepreneurs actually, generate. And I started I think about 10 years ago, I was speaking at the US Chamber of Commerce in DC, and I got a book full of statistics. And one of those statistics said only 12% of women entrepreneurs are making over $100,000 a year in annual revenue, and only 3% were breaking the $1 million mark. To me, that was shocking information. I had no idea that 88% of small business owners were literally not making enough to really sustain themselves because $100,000 in revenue doesn't account for any of your operating expenses, doesn't account for taxes, doesn't account for you paying yourself. And even if you run the leanest business, very few of us can survive off of that anymore. So it becomes a snowball effect where, especially with women entrepreneurs, when we're not generating enough revenue in our businesses, we don't have the resources to get the support we need in our businesses. And when we don't have support and we're doing it all ourselves, then we fall into the entrepreneurial poverty of time and the entrepreneurial poverty of energy. And this is where the burnout starts to come in for so many. When we're setting ourselves up to be the only person holding up our business, it does not take much to blow us down, like to knock our business out. And 82% of small business owners are operating month to month, which means one bad month could destroy their ability to stay in business. So for me, when I'm looking at entrepreneurial poverty, I'm always wanting to make sure, like, one, we're actually building a business that's sustainable, that not only can sustain you, the business owner, but that can have the resources it needs to continuously do marketing, to continuously serve your clients, to hire support, and allow you to stay in your lane where you're in your zone of genius, where you are doing the things that light you up and get you excited and actually giving you energy instead of depleting your energy, and ultimately frees up your time so that you can be focused either on just the things you love about working in your business or you can go live your life.
Wow. I know you don't know my story, but I just resonated with everything you said. My business will be 17 this year, 17 years old.
It's awesome.
And but when I started my business, it was a solution after divorce for me to continue homeschooling my 5 children. And so I started the business as a way of being able to stay home, homeschool them, and put food on the table. Um, so there was a lot of 18, 20-hour days. And in retrospect, looking back, I did not prioritize putting support around me because I felt like that was a waste of time that I didn't have. And so that was, looking back, one of my regrets. I wrote a book a couple of years ago called The Juggle is Real, and talking about the mompreneur journey, and as a single mom trying to balance that life and success was necessary. I mean, I called it chasing the mortgage payment.
Literally, though, that is so real. And I know so many women have been in that boat. I really believe, um, I left the corporate world over 20 years ago now. And when I was in corporate consulting, it just did not fit the life I wanted. It didn't fit it at all. I knew that there was no way I was gonna be able to get married and have kids and have a life, have a family. Everyone that was in that office with me was, I mean, they were pale, male, and stale, and they had plenty of money. They all made plenty of money, but most of them were on, their 2nd or 3rd marriage. If they had kids, they didn't see them. They had all the, dressings of success. They had the cars, they had the houses, all of that, but they didn't have a life. And
Mhm.
so I decided when I started my business, I was just gonna do basically everything the opposite of what I had been told. And then after I started my business in 2008, about 6 months into it, I discovered I was pregnant with my twins. So I had to get really, really clear about how I was going to do this because everything that I had been taught, how to hustle, how to, pound the pavement, how to do the 12 and 16-hour days. I was like, this is not going to happen anymore now that I'm a mom and now that I have these kids. So I think this is one of the big things that I love about working with women entrepreneurs because most of us are trying to build businesses that allow us to have a life, that allow us to support, not just financially support our families, but to be there for our families. And something that I'm in the middle of right now, I mean, my kids are teenagers now, my parents are aging, and I'm having to step in and manage nursing care for my parents and try to make sure they're taken care of. So, this is
Yeah.
such a huge thing. Like, so many women entrepreneurs really are the glue that is holding our entire society together. And we are pressed from both sides of the spectrum. So, we have to be really or in what is the word I'm looking for? We have to be really
Intentional.
clear and intentional about how
Yeah.
we do it. Because if we just take the things that worked for someone else, or if we just take the things that are how everybody, told us before we have to be showing up in business, it's gonna be like trying to push that square peg in a round hole. It's not going to fit. We have to really be willing to do things differently.
Yeah. I think for me, I always had a little bit of a bend towards color coding, and, these little, because yeah, gamified, things like when I was in corporate world, I would have like the color coded file folders and
Yeah.
things. I always had a little bend that way. But when that really came out and became necessary was when I was under the pressure of homeschooling 5 kids and running a business and running a house and feeding everybody 3 meals a day, because I didn't
Uh,
get to send them off to school and, have that time while they were at school. And there's lots of reasons why I chose to do that. 4 of my kids are adopted, and there was some learning challenges and things that they, school was not gonna meet. So I was on a mission.
Yeah.
I knew what I needed to do, and I also knew it was a season. So I you can do anything hard for a short period of time, but you should never do anything hard for a long period of time because it will burn you out. And, once you're burned out, it's very hard to recover from
I
that.
love that you just brought up that it was a season, and I think this is something that we have to really incorporate into the way we're thinking about our business because the season of having itty bitties when they were babies and toddlers completely different than now that they're teenagers, right? And each stage, it's like every 3 or 4 years, your family hits a different stage, everybody kind of levels up, but their needs are all different.
Yeah,
So, I remember in the very beginning of my business, I was basically attached to babies all the time,
yeah,
having twins first, and then I had my youngest a few years later, and that's a stage where I tell women who come to work with me that are in that early parenthood stage, I'm like, "Look, this is the hardest stage in my opinion. It is hands-on, it is really hard to separate, and also they need you so much at this stage, right?
yeah,
Developmentally, they need you so much. Once they're a little older and they are a little more self-sufficient, things change and it gets a little bit easier. Well, that means suddenly it's easier for you to do different things. There was a point where I wasn't traveling when my kids were really teeny tiny. I wasn't going to events or conferences, but suddenly they got a little older and they were okay without me for a little bit, and I was
yeah,
like, "Cool, I can attend this event, I can go on this retreat, I can do these things that I wanna do." But there's always gonna be those trade-offs, right? And being really aware of where your stage of life is, I think is one of the keys to building that life first business because you can say, "What's most important to me at this current stage right now?"
right.
And it's gonna be different for each and every one of us because we all have different situations. Our kids are all different, their needs are all different, our businesses are all different. Right now, it's so funny because everybody tells you when you have little kids, "Oh, it's gonna be so much easier. They'll be in high school and they'll never wanna be around." I'm like, "Really?" Because my kids are in high school and they always are around. They always wanted me to do stuff with them and, are asking me, "Can you pick up my friends and let's go to this movie? Can you take us shopping? Can we go do this? Can my friends come hang out?" And I was like, "You know what? This is what's important to me right now
Yeah,
is setting my business up so if the kids wanna have all their friends over, it's not a big deal, and I can actually be present and enjoy it." That's a trade-off, though. This past year, I actually let go of an office space I had because I was like, "You know what? I need to free up some resources so that I'm not feeling like I have to be in the office all the time." Because of course, when you get something outside of your home, you
right.
start feeling like, "I have to go to the office or else I'm wasting the rent." So now it's like, I'll go co-work if I need to get out of the house. But I decided to free up those resources so I could spend more time and not have that, like, feeling of, "Well, I have to go do this." Anytime I start to have the feeling of I have to do something or I should do something, it kind of is a little red flag to me. It's like, "Hold on, something's not in alignment right now. How can we make this a little easier and a little less stressful?"
Well, I'll tell you, this conversation went in a different direction than I was expecting. And we'll circle back to what I was planning in a minute. But I don't often get someone on the show that I can really talk about, you know, my experience with,
Yeah.
right? And that's the kind of women that you're working with is women who are really trying to balance a whole lot on the family side and still be successful in business. And that I have that heart for that as well. And one of the big things that you struggle with when you're in the trenches is guilt.
Oh my god.
Right? A little guilt, little shame, little and sometimes even others do it to you. Maybe not meaning to, but they'll say something or there's a word or whatever, and you're just like, "Oh, I feel like a terrible mother. I'm failing. We do that to ourselves as women. And I think that's why it was so important for me to hang on to the idea that it was a season, it wasn't a forever.
Yeah.
And I also relied a lot on my faith. I was like, God will reconcile my mistakes in all of this. They will turn out okay. My kids are all in their 30s now.
Yeah.
And now I have 6 grandbabies. So
So a
I
whole
mean, it's
'nother stage that
a
you
whole
get
different
to
stage. Yeah.
enjoy. I love that. See, I think this is one of those things that we face a lot of other mindset challenges, and the guilt, the mom guilt is seriously one of them.
Yeah,
And
for
I think
sure.
one of the advantages I have that is I realize now is so rare as I was raised by entrepreneurs. My family is full of entrepreneurs. Like my great-grandparents were entrepreneurs. So
That's great.
when you grow up in that, I'm here to tell any entrepreneur who's worried about how this impacts your kids, get your kids engaged and involved because one, I came into my business already having so much experience working with small business because I worked with my parents from the time I was in high school. And you pick things up without knowing at the time. Like, of course, when you're in high school, you're like, "Ah, I'll just do this thing that dad's asking me to do." But then you're like, holy cow, I know how to keep things organized. I know what an SOP is. I know how to run an
Yeah,
event. I know how to do a client appreciation event. I know how to have a sales conversation. Like, I picked all those things up because I was just in it all the time. And so it's been interesting now because my kids now work for me a little bit and they they know now and they recognize that the life I've created through my business for us is very different than what a lot of their friends experience.
yeah,
Most
yeah,
kids don't have their parents with them as much as my kids have had, me and my husband with them. Most kids that they go to school with, their parents are always stressed, always working, and I only work about 25 hours a week. So, it's a very different situation and them being able to see what's possible. I love that right now because I truly believe we're at a stage where any kid who's, like, in their early 20s, they're teenagers, the career that they're gonna have is has not even been invented yet. So showing them, like, all the opportunity and all the things that are available out there, and that if you're just brave enough to go do it, I think that's the biggest gift you can give any kid right now. Because the world of work is changing very, very, very quickly. More people are gonna shift into entrepreneurship, and, I mean, already the research is showing that something like 40% of people who have any sort of job are actually self-employed. So these are real things that, like, we have to think about as we're navigating this, but it's so incredible just to look back and see how it's impacted me and then how it's also, impacting my kids as they get older and start to make decisions about, well, what do they wanna do when they graduate?
yeah. Well, and I think so the word of encouragement that I would wanna give to, anybody who's in that situation, men struggle with this too, this idea of work-life balance, is a tough issue.
Yeah,
But the encouragement I would get, you know, I'm a little bit ahead of the curve here because my kids are all in their 30s. But if you went and interviewed them and asked them what they felt about their childhood being raised by a
yeah,
single mom and the fact that she was, working a lot and she was homeschooling, she was busy, what they'll tell you is they loved the way they grew up because they always had access to me. I
yeah.
was there. And we didn't have money to go on fancy vacations and things like that. We went camping in tents.
I
We
love
had
it.
bonfires and talked and went on hikes and, things that didn't cost a lot of money. So the things in my mind that I was putting guilt on myself about, in the way that I thought I was failing was the all of none of that mattered. None of that is anything that they would bring up now. You know what I mean? They
That's
didn't
amazing.
identify any of those things as an issue. They look back now and they think about all the fun times that we had because we spent all this time together.
I love
And
that.
so I think that it's an opportunity for me to just encourage someone who's coming up, in in a similar situation where you just feel like I'm just not making it. I'm just not doing a good job with my kid.
Yeah.
Listen, your kids don't care if they're wearing the latest whatever.
Seriously. And hustle culture tells us that, we're only successful if we're all wearing designer everything head to toe. We have the, super expensive car. Let me tell you, I've got a 10-year-old minivan sitting in the driveway and I'm going to drive that thing till the wheels fall off. I don't have designer anything because that's not who I am. And I think it's really easy in the small business space, especially when there are so many people talking about how to grow a business but their definition of success is only how much money you make and how much you can flash it around. I encourage people when they're designing their life first business to get really intentional about what their definition of success is,
Yes.
because it's different for each and every one of us. And again, it's
That's right.
different in each season. And we have to think beyond. Money is a terrible metric for success. If that's the only thing, you will always be chasing it. You will never be satisfied. You'll always be unhappy. And who wants to live like that? Like, I don't. So,
Yeah.
I encourage people to think about, what do you actually want your life and your lifestyle to look like in this season? What would make you feel successful? For me, having my afternoons off, being able to, take a week off every quarter, being able to be here with my kids and do things with them on the weekend, not having to look at anything work related once I close my lap. Like, that type of lifestyle makes me feel happy.
Yeah.
Looking at my health and well-being as someone with chronic illness, I measure my health and well-being based on how many good days I'm having. So, success for me looks like doing all the things that help me have more good days, drinking all the water I need to drink, going to my doctor's appointments, getting acupuncture, the things that are really easy to put off when you're stressed, I have to double down on because they help me have more good days. So I look at that for my definition of success. By the way, nothing related to diet culture or what size I am, because that is crazy making. And I think women conflate health and well-being with being a certain size. No, it's about how you feel in your skin and, how much energy you have. So
Yeah.
I think about that a lot. I think about my relationships. What does success look like for them? So, especially with my kids right now, and I love that you shared all these things you did with your kids. Like right now, I'm like having at least one-on-one time with each of my kids every single week. It doesn't matter if it's one-on-one time where they're going to the grocery store with me. Sometimes those are the times where you have great conversations in the car,
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll be like, "Hey, I've gotta run an errand. Do you wanna go with me?" "Oh, hey, I'm gonna go on a walk. Do you wanna go with me?" It's just having those little pockets of one-on-one time. That's what makes me feel successful in my relationships with my kids. When my relationships with my friends, I think this is something a lot of, especially women entrepreneurs, struggle with, is they don't have a support system. They don't have an emotional support system. So, who are your closest friends? Like, if you had to call and tell somebody, like, just want to yap about something exciting, I had this major win, or, oh my God, I'm so frustrated. I just need to vent for a minute. Who's your person? What does that look like?
I had a crazy friend. She was literally crazy. She was the wild and crazy friend, that lived in my neighborhood, and she knew what I was going through and stuff, and she would just show up with a gallon of ice cream,
Right? Those are the people we need in our corner. Like,
like, "I love you."
exactly. Like, we need friends. I had a loss. I lost my cousin about 6 months ago. She died unexpectedly, and you need the friends who are gonna show up at the grief groceries. You know what I'm saying? Like, you need the friends who are gonna check in on you when things are bad, but also the friends who are gonna be like, "Hey, let's have a girls' weekend. Let's go do something," who are gonna celebrate your birthday with you. And that's a definition of success that I don't think many people are thinking about. I'm thinking about it. I'm like, who's gonna be my group of old ladies sitting in our little tiny home village when we're all, like, in our 90s? Because that's where we're headed. So I think about these things a lot because, life is very short, and I feel like I don't wanna be spending it waiting to feel like I've made it. I wanna feel every day like, "This is great. This is the life I've created," and my business has allowed me to do that, and it's been very intentional designing my business. It's been very intentional in saying no to a lot of things and simplifying
Yeah.
what I do in order to have the life that I have. But I really feel like that's the secret, is to stop looking at what everyone else tells you you should do, let go of, all of the 47-step funnels and super complicated things, and really just get clear about what is it that you actually want, and then reverse engineer your business to support it.
I just love your whole approach to being proactive versus reactive.
Yeah,
Because it's very easy to slide into a reactive position where you're just putting out fires and you're just,
all the time.
doing all the things that you think you should be doing with really no intentionality or plan around it or system around it. You're just, as long as I'm working hard, eventually something good will happen and I'll be successful. this idea of planning for your success and planning for the life that you want. I mean, that is the kind of that's gold advice. If I had heard that 17 years ago, it would have been a game changer for me. I mean, I was very intentional about surviving.
Yep.
Um, but the idea of success, it was just for me, it was just getting through the next month, getting through the next quarter, getting through the next year, with my sanity intact, you know? One of the things I would did wanna ask you about was, one of the struggles I think that a lot of, entrepreneurs experience is this feast or famine phenomena that seems to take place. And so it's either you have more business than you know what to do with, and in that moment, all you're doing is trying to keep up, so you're not even planning or thinking or doing anything, or you don't have enough business, so you're in panic mode. What am I gonna do to get all this business? So how can people just kinda level that out? I think that's part of,
Yeah.
creating that balance in our life is if we don't have these extreme peaks, and valleys in
Yeah,
our
and it's
business.
so hard to get out of it when you're, like, in the weeds of it, right? Because you can't see further than what's has to be turned in this week. You can't see further than the next deliverable. So, there's a couple things that happen with this. One is, I mean, the classic reason people end up in that feast or famine is simply because they get so busy with client work that they stop doing marketing and sales.
Yeah,
So, if you stop doing marketing and sales, it might be okay short term, but the business you have today is the result of the work you did 3 months ago. That's usually how long it takes for anything you're putting out in your marketing right now to convert for a lot of small businesses into paying clients. So, understanding that means you've gotta keep that marketing and sales engine going all the time, and you have to prioritize it, which brings up the second challenge, is understanding your actual capacity. The reason a lot of small business owners can't keep both things going, the delivery and the marketing and sales, is because they don't understand the capacity and how much energy it takes for each client. So each client you take on doesn't matter what they bought into. They could work with you one-on-one. They could be a service-based client. They could be doing a coaching program. They could be in a group. But each client is a relationship and each relationship takes time and energy to keep
yeah,
up, to nurture, to manage. Like, there's always gonna be work that goes in behind the scenes. So we have to be really aware of that capacity. And one of the things I have all of my clients do is really map out what does that client experience look like for each offer that you have from the moment somebody says yes and they are onboarded and they're going through the delivery process all the way to offboarded. How long does each stage take? What does that look like? How can we streamline it as much as possible and know for each client about how much time it's actually going to take? That is so important, not only because then you start to understand how many clients you can reasonably manage and keep the sales and marketing engine going, but also if you ever want to hire somebody to work with your clients or to take the delivery off your plate, you better be real clear about what goes into doing that, or else it's very easy to hire people and discover you've way underpriced your products, programs, and services, and you actually don't have the capacity to send that to someone else. So those
right.
are the 2 big things I'm always thinking about for my clients is how do we keep the marketing engine going, the sales engine going, and how do we make sure we're really clear about delivery, the experience, the process, and the capacity it takes so that eventually we can get our team to start stepping in and we can build more capacity for more clients. But if you're in that feast or famine, one of those 2 things is where it's broken. One of those 2 things is where you're getting stuck.
Yeah. There's a book Patricia Shire wrote, called Breathe. It's kind of like one of those really quick reads, but I've read it like 100 times, it seems. It's one of those books that I, like, permanently have on my end table because I need to remind myself. And inside the book, she talks about the concept of margin.
Yes.
And that has helped me so much because what she says, which is so true because I am that person who runs full out. I did it for so long, I didn't know how to do it any other way, right? I just run full out, full
Yeah.
out, full out, full out. Well, then when life happens, which it inevitably does, something goes sideways in your life, it all crashes and burns because you've been running full out and there's no margin. So what she in this book talks about is shrinking our everyday capacity to allow for margin. So when something goes sideways, as it inevitably does, I mean, it could be a flat tire, it just throws your whole day off, right? Or whatever. It could be a major event, it could be a diagnosis, it could be something. But if we're running within and have margin and we have the space to expand, if we're
Yes.
running full out, there's nowhere to go, right? And that's a mental picture for me that helps me really kind of keep that mindset of, am I operating within margin?
Yeah. I love that. And I think it's so important again, because as you grow your business, your needs as a owner, as the CEO of your business are going to shift. And I think a lot of people feel like as the CEO, as they start building out their team and they serve more and more clients, their calendar should be more and more booked. And I'm like, hold on, no, no, no. As you're the CEO, your calendar needs to have a whole lot more free space in it because you are now on a managing level. You're not just working with clients and trying to keep everything going. Now you got to take care of everybody. You got to manage everybody. And you've got to be able to look up and plan for the big picture. And that takes a whole different mindset. So I'm working with a lot of my clients to getting them to having most of their calendar be blank space so that they have that margin. You want more space as your business grows so that you have that time to work on the big picture, so that you have the time to do deep work, so that you have the time to lead effectively. And honestly, if you couldn't handle being out of your business for at least 2 weeks, let's say you got hit by the flu, whatever it is, if you were forced to step out of your business for 2 weeks, if it couldn't keep going without you, then you have really overloaded yourself. And we need to look at what are the systems, what are the infrastructure we need to put in place so that you can create that margin again.
Right. Well, it's that difference between a $10 an hour task and a
Absolutely.
$1,000 an hour task, right? And I think delegation is one of those things that people, if you start your business, it's your baby.
Yep,
And you take a lot of personal pride in your reputation as a business. And the idea of handing it off to someone who you know for a fact does not care about it as much as you do, because nobody could, is really hard. It's really hard to get to that
it is.
place where you're not, uh, you know, you become like this micromanager control freak, which isn't good for anybody, and it's certainly not good for growing your business. So maybe we talk about a little bit about that, about how you can let go of that grasp we have on our reputation, our baby, so to speak, and allow others to help us grow and scale and serve our customers with
Absolutely.
excellence.
Well, and I'll say hiring people into your business, like you said, they're never going to care about your business the way you do, and they shouldn't. It's not theirs, right?
Mhm.
But it is hard to find the right fit people. And I think a lot of small business owners don't realize this because honestly, a lot have never had to build or grow a team. They've not had to manage a lot of people. And it is one of those things that is kind of crazy making. In fact, I see a lot of small business owners start to build a team and then they decide this is too hard. I hate managing people and they scale it way back. There's no right or wrong way here, but I will say it does take time and going into building a team knowing it's about finding the right people. And finding the right people for me always comes back to what is your vision for this business and what are your values? Because if you can't clearly articulate what the vision for this business is, like where is this business going? And you can't clearly articulate the values that you use as the decision making criteria for how you're running this business, then you are always going to be micromanaging because they don't know where they're going and they don't know the rules of the road to get there.
Yeah,
But if you have those 2 things in place and they understand, they are excited about where you're headed, they believe the same values, they really believe in the way you want to do business differently, then suddenly you can say, "Hey, I need you to, create a marketing campaign for XYZ," and they understand where you're coming from because you've given those parameters. So I think that's usually the biggest first step for a lot of people is they start hiring people, and yes, you can delegate the task, you can write the most detailed SOP on the planet, you can show them step by step what to do, but if you're not giving them clarity about where it's headed, they're never gonna take ownership because they can't. They're never going to know how to step out and give you better ideas or do better work because you're not giving them enough insight into what is happening in the business.
Well, one of my personal lessons that I learned, when the first person I hired was a part-time assistant, which is
Mhm.
probably typical,
Yep.
right? It's just getting those, lower level, easier tasks off your plate so you can focus on more high level stuff. Um, but and I did not hire a fresh out of college, and I'll put this in quote, cheap. I did not go cheap.
Yep.
Right? I hired somebody that, had some experience. It cost me a little bit more, but it saved me in the fact that they stepped up, they took initiative, because they had the confidence and the background to do that. That was worth it all day long. So, my core team has been with me 16 years, 11 years, 8 years. And I value that they have stayed that long. And they're all like my age. Like,
I
they're
think
all in around my age.
that's
And
amazing. And I think most people don't understand, like, that's what you're looking for is team who is there with you for the long haul.
yeah,
And it gets to the point where you can trust them and hand things off and know that it's going to be handled, it's going to be taken care of. That's the peace of mind most small business owners want. But to your point, I do think you have to get rid of the, like, again, hustle culture tells us, oh, you can outsource things for a couple bucks an hour
yeah, everybody's an
overseas.
hour.
That is not realistic,
Mm-mm.
honestly. Like, too many people get burned by those types of things. If you're a small business owner, the difference between us hiring and like a big corporation hiring, big corporations can hire super beginners and then spend 2 or 3 years developing them and training them into actually being able to do a role. We can't do that. We
Yeah,
need people who can come in and hit the ground running. And that means you're going to pay people who have some level of experience. Um, I mean, same. I always look for people who have some experience, and it doesn't even have to be in a business just like mine, but I'm looking for skill sets where I think they can handle it. And once you find those people, hang on to them, right?
yeah,
Like, I definitely have had moments where I'm like, "You have to stay with me forever because I need you here now. I don't know what I would do if I didn't have you on, my text
right.
messages."
And they know you. They know your
Yeah,
business. They know your customers. They know, like in our
absolutely.
case, we're a marketing agency. So every customer has a different brand. The owner has different preferences. I mean, the learning curve is massive.
It is massive.
So
And
we're
as a service-based business, that continuity and that trust
yeah,
is everything.
that's right. That's right. So I guess the lesson in that or the key takeaway is, you know, don't just pay what you think, that $8 an hour, $10 an hour, $12 an hour, step up, pay someone with some experience. And even though it's what you see as an administrative task or an easy task, listen, I did that and I had mailings go out with no postage on them or, you know,
Yeah.
like stupid mistakes because they're just there for the 10 bucks an hour or whatever.
Yeah.
So pay people who are gonna take the care to do things correctly, and it will save you in the long run from, you know, mistakes. Mistakes cost money.
Mistakes can cost a lot of money, and that's
Yeah.
where hiring the right people, taking the time to really do that, it always takes longer than you think, and you're always gonna have a couple that don't work out. And I think this is something a lot of people get very frustrated by because they hire their first person and they will know within a month that this is not the right fit, but then they feel bad about letting them go so quickly, and I'm like, okay, it's gonna get even worse. And then a year from then, they're still, should I let go of this team member? I'm like, you really have to hire slow, really take your time to make sure that these are the right fit people. Do test projects, do things to make sure that you actually work together well. But if they're not a fit, let them go. Bless and release. Like, let's keep going here because it is very expensive to have somebody who's not a right fit on your team.
Yes. Amen, sister. Okay, I know we're running a little bit short on time. So, if you think about the one or two key takeaways that you really want people to remember from this episode, I mean, we were all over the place, but
I mean, I love it though.
it
I
was
love when
awesome.
conversations kind of flow however they're going to. I would say probably the biggest one is to really think about your definition of success in your particular stage of life. 'Cause we're always changing, our family needs are changing, our personal needs are changing, and it's really easy to constantly be chasing someone else's definition of success, but that tends to lead to us making decisions in our business that don't serve us. That tends to put us into a path of saying yes to things that are actually gonna burn us out and exhaust us. So get clear on what it is you actually want, and then say no to anything that isn't gonna get you there.
Yes. Rachel, this has been awesome. I also want to say on that last point, you know, by having a clarity in what your definition of success and clarity of intent, what your intent
Yep.
is regarding your business, that should be a big part of your brand. I mean, that translates into your brand. So if you're not clear on it,
Yep.
brand is wishy-washy too. So very important.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thanks for sharing. I knew it was going to be awesome, and it was.
Well, thank you so much.